Good morning, everyone, and welcome into HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. We have almost a daily torrent of something relevant with Arkansas Razorbacks men's basketball. I'll say a torrent. I mean, it's been a lot. It really has been in the offseason. I think it's always this way, but when it's John Calipari's, I won't call it a circus. I'll call it a show. When it's John Calipari driving it, he's a guy that he does the rounds, whether it's recruiting, some of these podcasts and things like that. He's all over the place. He'll be back in Central Arkansas. I mean, the guy, I don't think he's stopped. He'll be back in Central Arkansas. He's scheduled to be back in Central Arkansas tomorrow. I'm going to go try to check that out. A speaking engagement he has. Like I said, the guy never stays put in one place, and it gives us plenty to talk about. But recruiting right now, man, you talk about getting back to July and the first July live eval period. There's more to come. This is the biggest month, typically the biggest month for players in the high school ranks in terms of, their recruiting really picking up, getting visits, starting to line out visits. You'll see a few commitments. I mean, Arkansas's already got one that happened back in May with J.J. Andrews in that 2026 class. But Arkansas coaches, we've talked about it through the weekend already, where they were at, who they were out to see. We gave you before the weekend ever got here, the day after that practice that we got to go to in Fayetteville, we were giving you clues as to where the staff was headed. I said Calipari would be at both Nike and Adidas. It played out that way. Last time he was just at Nike, that was in May, where I was there as well in Memphis. And we kind of gave you a blow by blow where they were at, what they were doing. The last we were on Saturday night, we gave you several pieces of intel, including a player that Calipari went and saw that's not on the normal pathway in terms of spring and summer grassroots. And it's a player that he's maybe going to add even as a potential to reclass out of 26 to 25 and become the final piece of the current roster. And we shared that name, Mikal Bruce McCroman, a 6'6" wing out of Pittsburgh. So we talked about all that Saturday, went through all that. We're not going to revisit all that again, other than now we're on commitment watch. Let's see if, in fact, Calipari and the player and his camp were able to get on the same page. And as Calipari described it, without mentioning the player by name because he can't, in that post-practice press conference, he just said, a developmental piece, long-term retention kind of guy. Okay, there's that. So we know he was out to see this young man Saturday night. And then I came on late Saturday night, just before midnight, and gave you all the details. So we got that out. We kind of finished with that part of it. So today we're going to focus again on some other big names that we know Arkansas is prioritizing for 2026. Keeping in mind, Calipari said, he's looking to take 3 or 4 of the NIL type, priority type of guys. Guys are going to have immediate impact, have plans for the top rotation as soon as they step on campus. In many cases, day one starter types. And so we've already down the road a little bit with one of those. Again, J.J. Andrews, we know that. But you're building around that now. So if you're going to take 4 of those kind of guys, and you've already got J.J., so you're probably zeroing in on 3 more. And so what we did in May, after the first May live eval session on the circuit, and again, that's when I was in Memphis, Calipari and Chin Coleman were there, Chuck Martin and Kenny Payne were both at Adidas 3SSB in Council Bluffs, Iowa. We came and did a segment on here where I kind of ranked the top 5 guys in terms of what are priorities, what should be priorities, and kind of looking at how Cal does things and how Cal builds, and at least has done it so far at Arkansas through now 2 recruiting cycles. When you count year 1, when he brought 3 guys with him that he had signed out of high school to Kentucky, signed or committed. And so we're going to do that again. We're going to re-rank or reprioritize. I'll do it that way. We'll kind of prioritize. Not much has changed, but it's changed and shifted a little bit. There's some things, and this is how recruiting works, right? And so I'm going to go through a top 5, and I'm going to bring in plenty of other names of guys to keep an eye on. They may not be a number 1 priority, but they're still priorities because Arkansas continues to have a presence at games, continues to make the contacts, continues to recruit. Remember, you're casting in about 12 to 15 players. Again, knowing at the end of the day when the Devils, you're probably maxing out at 4. And again, you have to understand when we say that, we're not counting guys that are technically high school players that you brought onto the roster at some point, and you say, well, you didn't count him. Well, because they're not factored into the big part of the NIL and what your vision is for your very next team. Those are your higher rated guys. So when I say 4, we're really talking about, for the most part, the upper level guys. That doesn't mean they wouldn't add more than that, like they have. Jaden Carrollette was an example. Paulo Samito, some of these names out of the high school ranks. That Aiden Kelly, I mean, as a walk-on, you had guys that were coming out of high school. You get the point. So we just want to kind of, when we say 4, when we start counting numbers, we want to qualify that. We want to qualify that to what that means, because when you quantify it, you can actually technically say, well, they actually bring in more than that. All right, so you get the drift. We won't spend a lot more time explaining how I get to my math. Again, thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It is a lovely Monday, isn't it? Mondays are great. We've had a heck of a one already here in Mikasa in the 501. I'd planned on coming on earlier, but I had I'll call them little projects around the house that needed immediate attention starting early this morning. So we've been taking care of some of that stuff. So here we are. Okay. So let's jump in this. We're also, by the way, we're going to split this up. We're going to talk recruiting, and then I'm going to talk about Arkansas's front line. I'm going to really start drilling down on what we saw a few days ago, but what we've been projecting, and kind of blend some of that in. But I'm going to focus on front line. I'm going to start with that, and then we'll get to other position groups and other other dynamics with the team later. But today we'll start with front line when we get to that point after the recruiting part. Now, I do have to do, speaking of housekeeping and a little project here, someone has screenshotted me. I say screenshotted. They sent me a text asking me about, I guess, one of the social media folks in Arkansas that talk about Arkansas recruiting, indicated that Jacob Lanier, in-state, class of 2026, 6'5" guard, transferred back in-state at Parkview. We've seen him play multiple times in recent weeks at the team summer camp here in the 501. And then I was at a Thursday night pickup run right before the 4th of July, so just a couple of weeks ago, to see him play. But is suggesting that he was recently on an unofficial visit to Arkansas. So we got to clean that up, because anytime you're talking about visits to Arkansas, whether official or unofficial, it gets people's radar up, especially when it's an in-state player. This did not happen. Jacob Lanier did not take an unofficial visit to Arkansas. He's not been on that campus lately. He's previously taken unofficial visits when it was the previous coaching staff. Took several at that time. Has not taken any recent official visits. So I just want to clean that up a little bit, because we want to make sure that folks are paying attention to these things. If you're getting the content elsewhere, which we expect people do, that you don't immediately think, okay, that's an in-state kid, maybe Arkansas is getting ready to offer. If they had him on, hasn't been on campus. He did recently take a visit to Arkansas State, unofficial. There's at least 5 SEC teams that are recruiting him. He recently picked up an offer from, and he's top 50, by the way, ranked player in the country, a 4-star, ranked somewhere in the 40s, I believe, by Rivals. That's Jacob Lanier. But Auburn recently offered him. Ole Miss has been pursuing him pretty consistently, as has LSU, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, and then you've got other high majors and mid majors that are also recruiting him. Little Rock Trojans. Assistant coach Corey Williams with Auburn at Auburn was out to see Lanier play. Former Arkansas assistant coach, but the previous staff, out to see him play over the weekend at the Under Armour event. You had events all over the country. Arkansas had a strong presence. And so Jacob Lanier is someone that Arkansas's recruitment of him has picked up. Remember, he was the 2-time now MVP of the top 30 game at Pangos All-American Camp. That played out in June. We reported on all of this, and we told you that Arkansas's recruitment has picked up with him, but he's not been on campus. That's an important distinction. We've cleaned that up now. We're nearly 10 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. It's why I always say, man, if you're really drilled in on this stuff, you want to make sure you get it right, because this stuff is important. And that's why we don't stay on the periphery and pretend otherwise. But let's really get into the meat of this. Let's start with J.J. Andrews. We talked a lot about some of his efforts and performances over the weekend. Started off with a strong 24-point game with Arkansas associate head coaches Chin Coleman and Kenny Payne courtside. That was Thursday at Nike EYBL. This is when the day that Calipari was with Chuck Martin at Adidas 3SSB. So this is how the staff started out the 4-day live eval weekend. But Andrews with a 24-point, 7-rebound game, very efficient. I think he was 8 of 11, field 1 of 1 from 3, 7 of 8 at the free throw line. Yep, that math, it adds up to 24 points. So a big game there. He had a couple of games that were a little bit off, not great shooting. He did finish with a 20-point game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 steals on Sunday. One of the games that when Calipari did arrive at Nike on Friday, one of the games that JJ had, Saturday game that Calipari and Chin Coleman were courtside, he had a double-double, 15 points and 14 rebounds. So when you look at the weekend as a whole, he just keeps on keeping on. We know ESPN moved him up to 12th overall, a 5-star. Finally got his 5th star back with ESPN. 247 Sports has him ranked 13th, the highest rated 4-star, 1 spot out of being a 5-star there. The last I checked, Rivals / On3 still had him at 40th. They should lose their card for recruiting coverage just based on that. They ought to be banned for a while. Service suspension, get in the penalty box. But J.J. Andrews, so he's priority number 1. We said this the last time in mid-May. I'm going down now the list. He remains priority number 1. You say, well, isn't that already a thing? He's already committed. So does he need to be on this list? He does. And how do we know that? Because John Calipari and his staff are courtside for every single game that J.J. plays. He committed the day before the Nike event in Memphis, the live eval in May, which I went to, but I was at his signing or his commitment press conference the day before he was heading over there. So he makes the commitment. And ever since then, Calipari, they were already coveting him and were courtside for a lot of his stuff. But you don't stop doing that until you get, the signing period is in November. And you continue to show your player that you're going after, whether they're committed or you're trying to get them to come visit and commit, that they're priority, they're top priority. So Arkansas continues to maintain him as a number 1 priority, and we've got him listed that way today. Still number 1. That did not change the last time. The last time we were on, we went with the number 1 overall player in the class, Tyron Stokes, in the second slot. Probably the most versatile player. Look at it positionally. At 6'7", can play the 1, 2, or 3, can help defend the 4. You can put him on the ball and make him a point forward. There's just multiple ways you could use him. To me, he is the best player in that class. And I've not wavered on that. He did not have as much of an impact role in the FIBA U19 World Cup as another priority Arkansas target, Jordan Smith Jr. did. But at the same time, he's still the number 1 overall talent. And Arkansas is a program that he has mentioned that he intends to visit. Now, he's already set up other visits and taken some visits. And so you're going to keep an eye on some of those teams. Louisville, where he's from. Now he plays out on the left coast for high school and grassroots, but he's from Louisville. He visited there last year. He's visited Kansas. Kentucky's on the list. There may be others, but if he makes Arkansas, that's certainly one to keep an eye on in terms of maybe Arkansas can get something done there. So he remains to me in that second slot. And last time I said it was kind of up in the air, him or Jordan Smith Jr. for second, and I had JSJ third. I'm now moving into a tie, Jordan Smith Jr. with Tyron Stokes in terms of the pecking order and the priority. I've got him now firmly either one. If you can only get one of those guys, you've hit a grand slam, one way or the other, for various reasons. I say Jordan Smith Jr., the 6'2" guard out of Fairfax, Virginia, that plus elite length, explosiveness, the motor. This is one of the fiercest competitors I've ever seen. He's the best two-way player in the country. Last year I said it was Caleb Wilson. He was off to North Carolina, Arkansas, recruited him for a while, backed off when the NIL askings were getting ridiculous. Jordan Smith Jr. is that guy. He is that guy. To be a player in the country, impacts winning. I said that you put him with Jashawn J.J. Andrews on the same team, and you've just doubled up that factor. Both of them are strong at both ends. Both of them play every possession to win the possession. They're not thinking about stats. They're not thinking about trying to play hero ball, or they're just doing whatever it takes to win. And they're 5 stars. It's not that they don't have 5-star talent. It's what part of what makes them as good as they are those extra things and stuff that's not always measurable by statistics. And so Jordan Smith Jr. is right there for me. You talk about his weekend. Calipari and staff were courtside for him aplenty. Just Sunday, he had a big double-double, 22 game high 22 points, game high 10 rebounds, game high 5 assists, game high 3 steals, game high box score plus 17, and a 6-point win for his team on Sunday. But he had some other big performances through the weekend. And again, Arkansas staff, including John Calipari, out to see him at the Nike event in North Augusta, South Carolina, which now bleeds into Nike Peach Jam, running into the next live eval period just this weekend. So again, we'll be locked in on that. But I've got now Jordan Smith Jr. tied with Tyron Stokes in terms of ranking priorities and what you would like to get for if you're adding now to J.J. Andrews, and he's one, and you could do 3 more. Calipari says we take 3 to 4, high end 4. He's talked about a 4-4-2 plan, 4 freshmen, 4 retention, 2 out of the portal. So this is one way to do that. Would be either one or both of those guys. Let's not get greedy, but let's not also lose sight of the fact that Jordan Smith Jr. has said he intends to visit Arkansas after Peach Jam. So we're going to find out pretty soon, in theory, when that might be. It's probably going to be sometime in the fall. Most of August is a dead period. The next month, you've got the end of the month, September, is when Arkansas is hosting Notre Dame in football, and it's the only home game at Reynolds Razorback Stadium in that month. So, you can maybe look at that date. We know Arkansas has already got a guard coming in. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I've got, as you know, I've brought intel from different sources the last several segments about where things might stand with Arkansas for Jordan Smith Jr. One source, who was a high major assistant coach on a staff, told me, "Oh, you caught me live for once." Well, that's cool. Thank you for the comment. Told me that Calipari has real momentum with Jordan Smith Jr. And the same source said, when I pushed back, I'm like, so real momentum, is you saying Arkansas's the leader there? He's leaning or whatever. And the comment was, well, so I don't know who it would be. Well, there's other teams at the top. Duke's been talked about a lot, and this coach is not not ignorant to that fact, nor that some other schools have been involved. So in a roundabout way, I guess that's as close as you can get into an endorsement. I asked another source familiar with the East Coast basketball, who's locked in on that stuff, and this is one of those examples. And he wouldn't go as far as to name a leader, but he did say the top 3 are Georgetown, Duke, and Arkansas. I had another source that was watching or actually saw one of my tweets about Arkansas coaching staff over the weekend being courtside or focusing on Jordan Smith Jr. And he just calls me up and just blurts out, I don't know why Arkansas is wasting their time on Jordan Smith Jr. It's going to be either Georgetown or Duke. So there's 3 different opinions, stark contrasts, and then you've got kind of one in the middle there. So that's intel. These are good sources that I talk to. It's why I rely on them. But it depends on what you hear, what day it is, and who's doing the talking. And so we just share with you what we get. I wouldn't bring you rumor type stuff and things like that. These are folks that are having those conversations with people that are dug in on this stuff. And we know recruiters, so their opinions could be different tomorrow or today. If I call them later and find out a little bit more, those were just recent day stuff going back a few days that we've already talked about on some of these segments. And this is why I prioritize the way that I do. All right, nearly 20 minutes in. This is HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. I want to focus on the front line a little bit because Calipari out of the high school ranks has yet to bring in a front line guy that's part of your top level guys. Because I know we could say, well, Paulo Samito just changed that. Technically true. Remember, we're talking about the guys you're focused in on in the early stages of high school recruiting, trying to get it done in November if you can, if it does drag out to the spring. But you know who your priorities are. And these are priority type guys we're talking about. He has not gotten a priority recruit to Arkansas yet from the front line. Excuse me. out of the high school ranks. He hasn't done that yet. And we've got a couple of names here. And we mentioned on the last, so we rated both of these guys sort of as 1 and 1A, more than one way to do it. And does it have to be just one? Could it be more than one of these guys? But Arafan Diane, who I talked about ad nauseum, we've done the most extensive reporting on him in terms of how it relates to Arkansas's recruitment. The fact that the young man's told me that he's going to take a visit to Arkansas in September, that's the plan. His guardian, who I've spoken with multiple times, who told me just recently, and I reported this Saturday, or Friday, one of those days, that he's not a candidate to reclass 2025, but that he has told me that they're going to probably look to take 5 to 7 visits through September and October, that Arkansas is in great shape for one of those. So if there is already a visit scheduled or planned for Arkansas in September, you got to look at that Notre Dame game date. And the other thing is that could change, I guess, if they're going to do September and October. Sometimes visit dates change. So that's also likely to be potentially flexible. But the other thing here is Arkansas's presence at everything he does. I mean, Calipari back out to see him on Thursday at Adidas 3SSB. We've talked about that. And then the staff, once Calipari moved on to Nike, the remaining assistant coaches over at Adidas in Rock Hill, South Carolina, courtside for everything he does. So real important to keep an eye on him. 7-1 center out of Iowa United Prep. Calipari was on that campus to see him last year. Priority guy. And it remains a top 5 guy for me. I've got him. If I've got Andrews, Tyron Stokes, and JSJ right after that, I've got Arafan Diane in terms of where it looks priority-wise, where it looks visit-wise, because he's expressed a visit upcoming, and just the fact that this isn't just to get adding a big just to say you got one finally at Arkansas, priority guy. This guy's blowing up in the recruiting circles. He's a priority for a lot of the top basketball programs in the schools, let alone high majors. And he's got comparisons to guy. I mean, I'm hearing the one I made was Joel Embiid. His guardian made one to the Joker, Nikola Jokic. And now you're hearing more of these national guys making some of those comparisons. So you're just starting to hear some of that. We've been talking about that since May. And so we kind of, tried to point everybody in the direction that this thing's going to really start to build when his name wasn't front and center out there. Had big performances at MBPA Top 100 camp playing on the same team as J.J. Andrews. So there's some idea that they played well together just there. So he's remains in my top 5. So that didn't change. One of the names we mentioned before, Christian Collins, the 3rd ranked player. It starts Tyron Stokes 1, Christian Collins actually 2, and then Jordan Smith Jr. 3rd when you talk ESPN's rankings. Christian Collins is a guy that when I covered him in Memphis and I interviewed him and he told me, yeah, I'm looking to visit Arkansas probably in the fall. And they just offered me, he said, Cal just offered him. That one seems to be a little bit in a neutral, sort of a neutral place right now, not really a heavy momentum in recruiting. And we haven't talked as much about him as a result. And so he was, again, participating with Team Why Not at the Nike EYBL this weekend. His teammate, who Arkansas also has recruited, both of them big wings. I consider Christian Collins more of a 3-4. Taj Ariza, more of a wing, but Taj Ariza is not playing. And Pete Stam did not play session 4 this past weekend for Team Why Not, and that's Collins' teammate. So we'll see what goes there. But Collins was in my top 5 before. He's out, and I mentioned him in tandem as an either or in those rankings with a guy like Mika Miernan. Let's see but that was uncertainty at the time. Would Miernan reclass? That's why he was the or player, because if he stays in 2026, then he's a guy that's, you got to get one, you should be pursuing at least one of those guys, Christian Collins or Mika Miernan. Last time I came on Saturday night, I gave you more intel and update that Arkansas staff has confirmed that they are still pursuing him, not in a casual way, not as we're kind of on the outside looking in. We'll take him if we can get him, but they're still recruiting him and pursuing him, but only his class of 2026. And so I told you on a few episodes before that I was getting wind that a lot of schools were backing off of him in terms of a reclass. They'd still maybe be in it for 26. Then he puts his top 7 list out. Arkansas's on it. Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina State, Indiana. I'm leaving somebody out. But at any rate, you've got Mika Miernan, who's already visited Arkansas, speaking of late September visits, last year. And so I keep him in the top 5 now based on what the staff told me, based on the fact that now he slots in with 2026 like everybody else. He teamed up with J.J. Andrews to help Brad Bill Elite win the program's first ever Nike Peach Jam. It was the E16 level last year. But so you've got a lot of things that play that could potentially play in Arkansas's favor. It's not to say that Arkansas was in the lead, but remember the visits he took last year, it wasn't just Arkansas. Utah, who's not on his final 7 list, by the way, and Michigan. Michigan's the team I think I just left out. Michigan was a place he visited, and they're in his final 7. And some folks you talk to think maybe Carolina's in the lead. They throw around a lot of NIL money. Like Kentucky and Carolina both have been doing that. Some think it's Michigan. And look at the frontline recruiting Dusty May has made for this more recent roster for Michigan. But of those visits, he told someone who told me they'd just spoken with him and said Arkansas visit blew the other 2 away, that being Utah and Michigan. So that was over a year ago. It's old news, but it's still something that's why we bring you intel. You can either consider it as important, maybe not important, but it's something you didn't know otherwise, and it's specific to this. I'm not coming on here giving you intel what a player's favorite color is or what do they dress their cat in socks. We don't give you, that's not intel, that's silliness. We bring you stuff that's hopefully have some value, and then we see how things play out. All right, so just running back through that, since I said more than 5 names, I've kind of got it. Obviously, J.J. Andrews, Tyron Stokes, Jordan Smith Jr., and then Erfan Diane, and now Mika Miernan. Where you say, well, those are 5 names, and I do have a tie at second, so those are 5 names. I'm going to slip into this top group. We'll just put a 6th priority is Tay Kenny. And the reason I'm doing that is because Calipari has identified and pursued with a vengeance lead guards, if nothing else, in the high school recruiting. And we see it over and over again since he's been in Arkansas. Boogie Fland, Darius Acuff Jr., McDonald's All-American 5-star guys. And so he's gone and gotten wings in a shoot. When you look at Carter Knox, when you look at Billy Richmond III, shooting guard, when you look at Malik Thomas, another combo / wing outside of these 5-star level guys that he signed early. So more of a priority than a back end late developmental in the spring. And that was Isaiah Seeley. But if nothing else, he's prioritized lead guard. So that's why we're going to go there right now with Tay Kenny, because he's got a visit scheduled. This was reported by Sam Lance with Zag's blog. We talked about it on Saturday. It came out over the weekend. When I interviewed him back in May and put that interview out on Twitter, he said he was going to set up an Arkansas visit soon. He's recently talked with Joe Tipton and said, yeah, I plan to visit Arkansas. And then said, one of the highlights for Arkansas is obviously John Calipari, the track record with guards development and getting guys to the NBA. This is a Kentucky native. Yes, he's an overtime elite, but both of those things line up with Calipari. Carter Knox, Malik Thomas. This is the next overtime elite guy that maybe you're going to make a priority out of. State of Kentucky. And Calipari and the staff recruited him there heavily before they ever came to Arkansas. And I mentioned this, I'm going to say it again. I believe he was the first class of 2026 player that Calipari offered. It's at least the first one that went public that I remember once he took the Arkansas job from this class. And so you got to look at all that stuff and say, this isn't just a casual recruitment. That doesn't mean Arkansas is going to get him. We've said that we've heard multiple places that maybe Louisville's a lean there. Louisville's an Adidas school. Tay Kenny plays on the Adidas circuit. Calipari's, we've already told you guys, courtside to see him, as was Arkansas staff throughout the weekend. But Calipari courtside on the Thursday when he was at Adidas 3SSB. But that visit's coming up, again, late September. We've talked about this. Sam Lance reported the 26th through the 28th. Arkansas, again, football hosts Notre Dame that weekend. He'll take part. I've already had someone confirm what should be obvious, but I just want to check. That's a football game weekend, so I'm guessing practice then game. Yep. That's going to happen, obviously. So you get that confirmed. We talked about that on one of these segments. But he's now in that group because a visit is scheduled. because this is really the first scheduled date, specific date that we know about. Again, Airfan Diane's told me in September. Well, it's pretty obvious if he's coming in September and it doesn't shift to October that it would be that weekend, right? Because but it doesn't have to be. Remember, Mika Miernan visited in September when Arkansas didn't have a home game. I think Alabama Birmingham was their only home date in the middle later in the month, and there was no game. Arkansas was on the road or in Dallas for the game, one of those dates. So it doesn't have to be that way, but I think they're going to try to maximize that and bring more than Tay Kenny in. So that's the top group for right now. Other guys that are top level guys that we've talked about so many times, Arkansas has been courtside to see them. Remember, Chuck Martin was in Switzerland for FIBA World Cup U19 just a few weeks ago with Jordan Smith Jr., mentioned Tyron Stokes. Caleb Holt on the Adidas circuit led his team, Game Elite 17U, to the championship. So Nike's championship's coming up this week at Peach Jam. Adidas had theirs this past weekend. They have other events upcoming, but they had their their championship for their session play, and Caleb Holt led his team to that. Again, Calipari courtside to see him Thursday, and the rest of the staff throughout the weekend. Brandon McCoy Jr., who did not play in the spring, the first time we really saw him pop up big on a radar was at FIBA World Cup, and he didn't. He was the low, the 12-player team, the low man on the totem pole in minutes. There were some, I think, a game or two he didn't play. Got a few minutes here and there, and some of the blowout wins he got more minutes. Had some decent performances over there, but he was back on the circuit. Nike EY and Calipari was there to see him, as was Arkansas's remainder other members of the coaching staff. Now he's at St. John Bosco out in Los Angeles, teammates with Taj Ariza and Christian Collins in high school. Can you imagine that? But McCoy's still a top 10 rated 5-star guard. And so Arkansas continues to recruit him. So Tay Kenny, Brandon McCoy Jr. is more of a combo to me. 6'3", he may have a trajectory where he wants to be the lead guard wherever he goes. But I think he's kind of a combo. Just keep an eye on him. I've got him in this next tier, not in terms of his ability and talent. He's rated higher than Tay Kenny, but we have to move the priorities up to guys that are actually scheduling visits, because it's more than one thing. Let's not forget that one of the things that's going to really play into how you focus on players and zero in on them is not your love affair and their love affair with you as a staff or whatever clicks. It's going to be that NIL money. And some guys are going to price themselves out of what Calipari's willing to do. It's always been that way since NIL's been a thing and since he's been in Arkansas. They're not going to get into these back and forths trying to, up the ante and, leapfrog some other team that's put out an offer that Arkansas really didn't have in the valuation range that they'd already established. They're just not going to get wild with that stuff. And so that's going to temper what's going on out here. And so when you see visits scheduled, that means that part of it is not out of whack. That's not to say it won't get out of whack at some point, but for now, you feel like there's a reasonable path for you to get that player in a valuation range in NIL that you see is where they should be, right? So there are other teams, again, there are other programs that will overpay to win a recruiting battle. Kentucky, North Carolina, there's some other ones. Georgia Tech overpaid for Mohamed Silla in the 2025 class back in, when that stuff went down. Arkansas wasn't willing to do it. So the track record's established. So some of these names, I'm not saying this is not why I have them outside of it. I'm saying think about that these might be factors that affect why you don't see guys getting visits scheduled and making plans with Arkansas. Again, outside of that top group, Caleb Holt, Brandon McCoy Jr., Christian Collins. We're not going to completely shelf that, but let's see where that goes. Some of the other names that Arkansas continues to prioritize in terms of where they show up and what events they go to see and make sure that they're there to see these guys. And this is not just the shoe circuits. Remember, back in June when the shoe circuits were off, there were also some high school scholastic events. One in Kansas City where Calipari was at. But Arkansas staff continues to go out and see guys like Abdou Toure, who took an unofficial visit, the 6'6" wing out of Notre Dame High School in Connecticut. They have been courtside for nearly everything he's done in his recruitment. He took the unofficial last October. He's a top 30 guy, on the cusp of a 5-star type of guy. Played in NBPA top 100 camp. I mean, Arkansas's seen him everywhere. But they continue to be courtside for him, including Calipari. on Thursday at Adidas and the other assistant coaches that day and beyond through the weekend. So keep an eye on him. Let's see if there's anything that goes there. Jalen Montnati out of Owasso, Oklahoma, the 6'7" sharpshooting wing that continues to be a player that Arkansas tracks, goes out to see. So it's not just about maintaining text and phone contact. There's a lot of other stuff going on there in terms of his recruitment with Arkansas when they keep showing up. So I'm not saying these are the top priority guys, but again, when you have to cast a net big enough with top level guys, even if you're only going to go 4 deep, because at some point you may have to make determinations about some, again, because of an NIL or some role that they want that you can't quite envision for them. And you're not going to, Calipari, with one thing he is, and he talks about it, I'm not promising stuff I can't deliver. He's very straightforward about what it is. And he prioritizes his high school guys, but there are limits to that. The money's going to put limitations on it. If you want this and we see that this, we may have to part ways. And then the role might be the same thing. You want 30 minutes and you want with the ball in your hands the entire time. I can't give you that. So those are things to think about, and why these other names matter. If you don't think they're the top priority, and I didn't list them as top priority, some of these other names, right? We went through the top 5 or 6. We're leaving it to the fact that don't take your eyes completely off of them. They may be what Arkansas, and it's not settling. These are top level guys being pursued by the top programs in the country. There are other names out there. Let's just move on and finish up with a couple more things here. Let's see, I can't even read my writing here again. Just a reminder, we talked about it Saturday. Tyrone Jamison, the 6'2" guard out of Shreveport, Louisiana, top 15 in the composite national rankings in class of 2027. Another point guard, lead guard, so a 5-star. Took that unofficial visit for Arkansas season opener against Lipscomb way back in November, right? Early in November. Arkansas contacted him right after midnight on June 15th, the first opportunity that Division I coaches had to make direct contact with players in that class. It's always the same calendar date every year. It's just the next class the next year. So next year will be class of 2028 on June 15th. So Arkansas, he's been on campus. They made the early contact, one of those first schools to do it. Calipari watches him on the 16U level. And I think with JL3 Elite, I think they were playing Drive Nation out of the Dallas area when Calipari was there to see him. And then he reports an offer, and we got him on the record. He said he spoke with Cal and associate head coach Jen Coleman. And then he said he's excited about the opportunity, the chance to play for the best coach in the world. And so we'll see if it leads to a commitment at some point. Visits later. He's going to be recruited by a lot of places. Just wrapping up with a reminder of something we've already talked about Saturday. And then one more thing. We kind of did give you intel on Jason Crow Jr. A lot of scuttlebutt last week, and we were talking about how most of the national recruiting analysts now think Missouri's in the driver's seat there. And then some of the talking points, I hadn't seen it out at that point. We brought it up on the show. It may have been discussed elsewhere by now. The fact that we were hearing that his dad, who's his high school coach at Inglewood in California, is going to be brought onto the staff. Dennis Gates has a staff opening. So we'll see if that plays out. His announcement date's the 18th. So that's later this week. Is that Friday, the 18th? And so we're going to learn soon enough. It sounds like it's Missouri. But, and I'll say this, Arkansas's coaching staff is aware of what's being said and what's out there. And I don't think, I don't think they are feeling like they're in a position of confidence that they're going to get him. But I said this before, I don't think they prioritized him as much, I'm sure they didn't, as guys like Jordan Smith Jr. and some other ones. So there's that. All right, we were going to do the Frontline stuff, but I got carried away talking high school recruitment today, already 40 minutes in. I'm not going to drag this out to an hour because I really want to talk about Arkansas's Frontline. I plan again on doing that today. Not a fan of Crow. That's one of the comments. Crow is maybe the best scorer in the high school ranks right now. He had a big 37-point game the other day. Tyron Stokes, who Arkansas was obviously out to see him as well, so they would have seen Crow at the same time. But Stokes had a 27-point, 13 rebound game. I think the same game that Crow had 37. He's an outstanding player, ranked top 5 according to ESPN in the country. Nothing to not like about him other than, well, there actually is. You don't see him put up a lot of other stats. He's not a strong rebounder. He's not a facilitator, really. He's going to be a lead guard. That's interesting. We'll see. I'm not saying where he, doesn't get some assists, but he's not consistent there. Defensively, a lot of question marks, but the dude is a bucket, one of the most talented ones that are out there, maybe the best. But we're going to sign off now. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Once again, I'm Kevin McPherson. Please hit subscribe, like, and share if you haven't done already. Keep an eye on things and be back to talk more about this recruiting stuff, as I like to call it. We're on commitment watch with Mikael Bruce McCrummon, the 6'6" wing out of Pittsburgh. But I am going to pick up tomorrow. We're going to focus not on recruiting unless something breaks. We're going to focus more on the front line. That'll be tomorrow. I needed to probably break that up anyway, because I want to spend at least 20 minutes, probably end up doing 30, going through what I think. I'll do a teaser. I think arguably could be Arkansas's best front line in many, many years. There's a pathway for that. We're going to go through all of it. We're going to talk tandems. How do you mix and match that personnel? Minutes allocations, roles, and how it fits with other players outside of the top 3 guys on your front line. And then we'll go deep into those top 3. But until tomorrow, and unless something breaks, take care of yourselves. We appreciate all of you. See you soon.